The sun hung lazily in the sky, casting golden rays over the small town park. It was the kind of day where everything seemed peaceful. Children played on swings, dogs chased frisbees, and couples strolled hand in hand along winding paths. Among the benches that dotted the area sat Maya Johnson, a young black woman whose presence commanded quiet respect despite her circumstances. She leaned gently against her crutches, which rested by her side, their metal gleaming faintly under the warm light. Her short curly hair framed her face and her dark eyes scanned the surroundings as if soaking in every detail of the moment. Maya loved coming to this park. It was one of the few places she could go without feeling overwhelmed by the noise and chaos of daily life. Today, however, something felt different, not because of the weather or the people around her, but because of an unease that lingered at the edges of her mind. Still, she tried not to let it bother her. She had learned long ago how to push aside such feelings and focus on what mattered most, finding joy even in the smallest moments. As she adjusted her position on the bench, shifting slightly to relieve pressure from her legs, 3 figures approached. At first glance, they didn't seem like anyone special, just 3 men walking together, laughing loudly about something Maya couldn't quite hear. But as they drew closer, their body language shifted. Their laughter grew louder, almost forced, and their eyes locked onto her. Maya instinctively tensed, though she kept her expression neutral. She'd seen looks like theirs before, judgmental, mocking, full of assumptions she knew all too well. The tallest of the 3, a broad-shouldered man with messy blonde hair, stepped forward. His name was Jake, though Maya wouldn't learn that until later. He wore a faded red t-shirt and ripped jeans, his hands shoved into his pockets as he swaggered closer. Behind him trailed 2 others, Ryan, shorter and wiry, with a scruffy beard, and Kyle, who looked younger than the rest, his face still bearing traces of boyish features. All 3 carried themselves with an air of arrogance as if the world existed solely for their amusement. Well, Jake said, his voice dripping with sarcasm as he stopped a few feet away from Maya's bench. What do we have here? Maya didn't respond immediately. She wasn't sure whether ignoring them would make them lose interest or provoke them further. Either way, she decided silence was her best option for now. Instead, she focused on steadying her breathing, clutching her crutches tighter as if drawing strength from their solidity. Ryan chuckled, nudging Kyle with his elbow. Looks like someone forgot how to walk properly, he sneered, his tone sharp enough to cut glass. Kyle grinned awkwardly, clearly unsure whether to join in or step back. Meanwhile, Jake took another step forward, his shadow falling over Maya as he loomed above her. Hey, I'm talking to you, Jake snapped, his patience wearing thin when Maya refused to engage. You deaf or something? Finally, Maya raised her head, meeting his gaze with steady eyes. I'm not deaf, she replied evenly, her voice soft but firm. But I don't see why I should waste my time talking to someone like you. For a brief moment, Jake looked taken aback. Then his lips curled into a sneer and he exchanged glances with his friends. Someone like me? He echoed, feigning offense. What's that supposed to mean? You think you're better than us just 'cause you can't even stand up straight? Maya clenched her jaw, refusing to rise to the bait. She had dealt with comments like these countless times before, from strangers on the street, classmates in school, co-workers at jobs she'd struggled to keep. Each insult chipped away at her confidence, but she always reminded herself of one thing. Their words were a reflection of their own insecurities, not her worth. Still, hearing them never got easier. You know, Ryan chimed in, leaning forward, with a smirk. Maybe she needs help standing up. What do you guys think? Before Maya could react, Jake reached down and grabbed one of her crutches, yanking it out from under her arm. Caught off guard, Maya stumbled sideways, barely managing to catch herself before hitting the ground. Pain shot through her arms as she braced against the impact, her breath hitching in her throat. The sound of laughter rang in her ears, loud and cruel, drowning out the distant chatter of other park-goers. Give it back, Maya demanded, her voice shaking with anger and fear. She extended a hand toward Jake, hoping he might relent. But instead, he held the crutch aloft, waving it, teasingly out of reach. What's the magic word? He taunted, grinning wide enough to show his teeth. Please. Pretty please. Tears pricked at the corners of Maya's eyes, but she blinked them away furiously. She hated showing weakness, especially in front of people like this. They fed on it, thrived on it, turning every display of vulnerability into ammunition for their next attack. And yet, no matter how hard she tried to steel herself, moments like these always left her feeling exposed, raw. Just as Jake prepared to toss the crutch aside, a new voice sliced through the tension like a knife. Put that down, everyone. Froze, including Maya. Standing a few yards away was a woman unlike anyone any of them had seen before. Tall and athletic, with shoulder-length brown hair tied back in a ponytail, she exuded an aura of authority that demanded attention. Her gray sweatshirt and black leggings suggested she'd been exercising nearby, but there was nothing casual about her stance. Every muscle in her body appeared coiled, ready to spring into action if necessary. Jake turned slowly, his grin faltering as he took in the newcomer. "Who asked you?" he shot back, though his bravado sounded weaker than before. The woman ignored him, stepping closer until she stood between Maya and her tormentors. Only then did she speak again, her voice calm but laced with steel. "I said, put it down. Now." For a moment, nobody moved. Then, reluctantly, Jake lowered the crutch and dropped it onto the ground. Whether it was the woman's commanding presence or the realization that things were spiraling out of control, none of the men dared to argue further. As the stranger bent down to retrieve the crutch, Maya felt a flicker of hope ignite within her, a tiny spark in an otherwise bleak situation. Little did any of them know this encounter was only the beginning. The park seemed to hold its breath as the stranger stepped forward, her presence filling the space between Maya and the three men. She moved with purpose, each step deliberate and measured, her eyes locked onto Jake like a hawk tracking its prey. There was something about her, something that went beyond her height or build, that made it clear she wasn't someone to be trifled with. Her confidence radiated outward, silencing the laughter that had echoed moments before. Jake shifted uncomfortably, under her gaze, his earlier bravado beginning to crack. He glanced at Ryan and Kyle, perhaps hoping one of them would say something to break the tension. But both men stood frozen, their expressions flickering between fear and confusion. None of them had expected anyone to intervene, let alone someone who looked so unshakable. "Who are you supposed to be?" Jake finally blurted out, his voice louder than necessary. He tried to sound tough, but there was an edge of uncertainty beneath his words. "This isn't your business." The woman didn't respond right away. Instead, she crouched down briefly to pick up the crutch Jake had dropped, handing it gently to Maya without taking her eyes off the trio. "Here," she said softly, her tone calm but firm. "Are you okay?" Maya nodded, though her hands trembled slightly as she took the crutch. She wanted to thank the woman, but her throat felt tight, choked by a mix of emotions she couldn't quite sort through. Relief, gratitude, and even a sliver of hope swirled inside her, battling against the lingering sting of humiliation inflicted by Jake and his friends. Once Maya was settled, the woman straightened up again, turning her full attention back to the bullies. "You think picking on someone weaker makes you strong?" she asked, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. Each word carried weight, forcing the men to take a step back, not physically, but emotionally. Jake scoffed, trying to regain control of the situation. "We weren't hurting anybody," he muttered, crossing his arms over his chest. "She's fine." "She's not fine," the woman shot back, her tone sharp enough to make him flinch. "And neither are you if you think this kind of behavior is acceptable." Ryan cleared his throat nervously, glancing around as if searching for an escape route. "Look, lady, we were just messing around," he offered weakly, his voice barely above a whisper. "No harm done." "No harm done?" the woman repeated, incredulous. She took a step closer to them, her movements steady and deliberate. "You knocked her crutch away, laughed at her, and called her names. That's not messing around, that's bullying. And it stops now." Kyle shuffled awkwardly, his hands stuffed deep into his pockets. He looked younger than the others, his face pale and uncertain. "We didn't mean anything by it," he mumbled, avoiding eye contact. It was obvious he regretted being part of this, but he lacked the courage to stand up to his friends. The woman ignored Kyle's feeble attempt at justification and focused instead on Jake, who seemed determined to keep up his act of defiance. "Let me ask you something," she said, tilting her head slightly as if studying him. "Do you know what it feels like to be helpless? To have people treat you like you're less than human because of something you can't control?" Jake opened his mouth to retort, but no words came out. For the first time since the confrontation began, he actually looked unsure of himself. The woman pressed on, her voice growing quieter yet more intense. "I bet you don't, because guys like you only feel powerful when you're tearing someone else down. But guess what? That doesn't make you strong. It makes you pathetic." The word hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Ryan and Kyle exchanged uneasy glances while Jake's jaw tightened, his fists clenching at his sides. He wanted to lash out, to say something clever or biting, but the woman's unwavering stare kept him rooted in place. She wasn't just talking anymore. She was dismantling him piece by piece, exposing the insecurities he tried so hard to hide behind cruelty. Without warning, the woman closed the distance between herself and Jake, moving faster than any of them anticipated. Before he could react, she grabbed his wrist and twisted it behind his back, using her other hand to push him down onto one knee. The move was smooth and efficient, leaving no room for resistance. Jake gasped in shock, his bravado crumbling completely as he struggled to pull free. "Hey, let go of me!" he shouted, panic creeping into his voice. But the woman held firm, applying just enough pressure to keep him subdued without causing real harm. "This is what helplessness feels like," she said coldly, leaning down so her words were close to his ear. "Not fun, is it?" Ryan and Kyle backed away instinctively, their faces pale with fear. They had never seen anyone handle themselves like this, not in person anyway. Movies and TV shows always portrayed heroes as invincible figures who defeated villains with flashy moves and dramatic speeches. But this was different. This was real, raw, and terrifying in its simplicity. After a few seconds, the woman released, Jake letting him stumble backward. He rubbed his wrist, glaring at her but clearly unwilling to provoke her further. His two companions hovered nearby, too scared to speak or move. The dynamic had shifted entirely. The bullies were now the ones, on the defensive. "You got lucky," Jake muttered, trying to salvage some shred of dignity. "Next time you won't be so—" "There won't be a next time," the woman interrupted, her voice icy. "Because if I ever see you bothering her or anyone else, I'll make sure you regret it. Understand?" Jake hesitated, then gave a reluctant nod. He didn't trust himself to argue anymore, not after what he'd just experienced. With one last scowl, he turned and walked away, motioning for Ryan and Kyle to follow. The two men hurried after him, casting nervous glances over their shoulders as they retreated. When they were finally out of sight, the tension in the air began to dissipate. Maya exhaled slowly, releasing a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. She looked up at the woman, her dark eyes filled with gratitude and awe. "Thank you," Maya said quietly, her voice trembling slightly. I don't know what to say." The woman smiled faintly, her expression softening. "You don't have to say anything," she replied. "Just promise me one thing." "What's that?" Maya asked. "That you'll keep standing tall," the woman said, gesturing to Maya's crutches. "No matter what anyone says or does, don't let them bring you down. You're stronger than they'll ever be." Maya nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her chest despite everything that had happened. For the first time in a long while, she believed those words might actually be true. After the three men disappeared from sight, the park returned to its usual tranquility. Birds chirped faintly in the distance, and the gentle rustle of leaves filled the silence left behind by Jake, Ryan, and Kyle. But for Maya, the quiet felt different now, lighter, as if a heavy weight had been lifted off her shoulders. She sat on the bench, gripping her crutches tightly, still processing everything that had just happened. Her heart was racing, not from fear anymore, but from something else entirely. a sense of safety she hadn't expected to feel so soon. The woman who had intervened stood nearby, watching Maya carefully. She didn't rush to speak or push for answers. Instead, she gave Maya space to collect herself. When their eyes met again, the woman offered a small, encouraging smile. "Are you okay?" she asked gently, repeating the question from earlier. This time, her tone carried even more warmth, like a comforting blanket wrapped around Maya's fragile emotions. Maya hesitated before nodding slowly. "I think so," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's just, I wasn't sure anyone would step in. People usually don't." The woman frowned slightly, her brow furrowing as she processed Maya's words. She crouched down beside the bench, bringing herself closer to Maya's level. "That's not right," she said firmly, though her voice remained kind. "No one should have to deal with that kind of treatment alone. You deserve better than that." Maya blinked, surprised by the sincerity in the woman's voice. Most people either avoided situations like this altogether or offered empty platitudes without truly understanding the impact of their actions. But this stranger, this woman who had appeared out of nowhere, seemed genuinely invested in making sure Maya was all right. "Thank you," Maya said again, her voice steadier this time. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't shown up." The woman waved a hand dismissively, as if brushing aside the idea that she'd done anything extraordinary. "Don't mention it," she said with a shrug. "I couldn't just stand by and watch. Besides, standing up to bullies is part of my job." Maya tilted her head curiously. "Your job?" The woman chuckled softly, rising to her feet. "Yeah, my name's Elena Carter," she introduced herself, extending a hand toward Maya. "I'm a soldier, currently on leave, but, well, let's just say I've had plenty of practice dealing with guys like them." Maya shook Elena's hand tentatively, marveling at the strength and confidence in her grip. "I'm Maya Johnson," she replied, smiling faintly despite herself. "And I'm really glad you decided to go jogging today." Elena laughed, the sound light and genuine. "Me too," she admitted. "Though I wasn't planning on getting into a scuffle in the park. Guess I can't stay out of trouble even when I'm supposed to be relaxing." For a moment, they both shared a laugh, the tension melting away completely. It was strange how quickly things could change, from fear and humiliation to laughter and relief, all because someone chose to step in. Maya found herself feeling grateful not just for Elena's intervention, but also for her presence. There was something about Elena that made Maya feel seen and heard, as if she mattered in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. "So," Elena said after a pause, glancing around the park thoughtfully, "do you come here often? Or were you just passing through?" "I come here sometimes," Maya explained, adjusting her position on the bench. "It's one of the few places where I can sit quietly and enjoy some fresh air. I like watching people go about their day. It reminds me that life doesn't stop just because I'm facing challenges." Elena nodded, clearly impressed by Maya's perspective. "That's a good way to look at it," she said approvingly. "Not everyone has that kind of mindset. What about those guys? Have they bothered you before?" Maya hesitated, debating whether to share more. She didn't want to burden Elena with her problems, especially since the woman had already done so much for her. But there was something about Elena's demeanor, her openness and willingness to listen, that made Maya feel comfortable enough to open up. "They're not the first," Maya admitted quietly. "People like them. They see my disability and assume I'm weak or helpless. They don't realize how hard I've worked to get where I am. Sometimes it feels like no matter what I do, I'll always be judged based on something I can't control." Elena listened intently, her expression thoughtful. "That's not fair," she said simply. "You shouldn't have to prove your worth to anyone. Your strength speaks for itself." Her words struck a chord deep within Maya. She had spent years fighting against stereotypes and prejudices, often doubting whether her efforts were enough. Hearing someone validate her struggles and acknowledge her resilience was unexpectedly empowering. "Thanks," Maya murmured, her voice thick with emotion. "That means a lot." Elena smiled warmly, placing a reassuring hand on Maya's shoulder. "Anytime," she said sincerely. "Listen, I know we just met, But if you ever need help, or even just someone to talk to, you can count on me. Okay? Maya nodded, touched by the offer. Okay, she agreed softly. As they continued talking, the conversation shifted to lighter topics. Elena shared stories about her time in the military, describing the camaraderie she'd formed with fellow soldiers and the challenges she'd faced during deployments. Maya listened with fascination, intrigued by Elena's experiences and the sense of purpose she exuded. In turn, Maya talked about her advocacy work for disability rights, explaining how she used her platform to raise awareness and fight for equality. "You're doing important work," Elena said earnestly when Maya finished speaking. "The world needs more people like you, people who refuse to give up no matter how tough things get." Maya blushed slightly at the compliment, unused to receiving such praise. "I just try to make a difference," she said modestly. "Even if it's small, it matters." "It does," Elena insisted. "Trust me, I've seen firsthand how one person's actions can inspire others. You're stronger than you think, Maya. Don't ever forget that." By the time they parted ways, the sun was beginning to set, casting a golden glow over the park. Maya watched as Elena jogged off into the distance, her figure growing smaller until she disappeared from view. For the first time in a long while, Maya felt hopeful, not just about herself but about the possibility of finding allies in unexpected places. And as she gathered her things and prepared to head home, she realized something important. Sometimes, all it takes is one act of kindness to remind us that we're never truly alone. The next morning, Maya woke up feeling different, not just physically after the events of the previous day, but emotionally too. For so long, she had carried the weight of being dismissed, ignored, or belittled by people who didn't understand her struggles. But now, thanks to Elena's intervention, she felt a spark of determination she hadn't felt in years. It wasn't just about seeking justice for what had happened. It was about standing up for herself and showing others that bullying wouldn't go unanswered. Elena had offered to accompany Maya to the police station, and Maya accepted without hesitation. Having someone like Elena by her side made the daunting task feel less overwhelming. Together, they arrived at the small-town police station shortly after breakfast. The building was modest, with faded brick walls and a sign out front that read, "Town Police Department" in bold letters. Inside, the air smelled faintly of coffee and old paper, and the hum of fluorescent lights filled the quiet space. At the front desk, a young officer greeted them with a polite smile. "How can I help you today?" he asked, his tone friendly but professional. "We need to file a report," Elena replied confidently, stepping forward slightly as if shielding Maya from any potential resistance. "About an incident that occurred yesterday in the park." The officer nodded, gesturing for them to follow him into a private meeting room. Once seated at a wooden table, Maya began recounting the details of the encounter with Jake, Ryan, and Kyle. At first, her voice wavered, unsure of how much detail to include, or whether the officers would take her seriously. But Elena sat beside her, offering silent encouragement with her steady gaze and occasional nods. "They laughed at me and called me names because of my disability," Maya explained, gripping her crutches tightly under the table. "Then one of them, Jake, he knocked my crutch away, leaving me stranded on the ground. If Elena hadn't shown up..." Her voice trailed off, but the unspoken implication hung heavy in the air. One of the officers, a middle-aged man with graying hair and a kind face, leaned forward slightly. "And this woman, Elena, she intervened?" "Yes," Maya said, glancing at Elena with gratitude. "She stopped them before things could get worse." Elena took over at this point, her military training evident in her clear and concise explanation. She described exactly what she had witnessed, the taunts, the physical intimidation, and finally her decision to step in. When she recounted how she had disarmed Jake and pinned him down, the officers exchanged impressed looks. "That must have been quite a sight," the second officer, a younger woman with curly hair, remarked with a hint of admiration. "Not many people would have handled that situation the way you did." "It wasn't about handling it," Elena corrected gently. "It was about doing the right thing. Those men need to understand that their actions have consequences." The officers agreed, jotting down notes as they listened intently. They assured Maya and Elena that the case would be taken seriously, especially given the circumstances. Thanks to Elena's description and credibility as a soldier, the report carried significant weight. The officers promised to locate Jake, Ryan, and Kyle, and bring them in for questioning. As they left the police station, Maya felt a mix of emotions swirling inside her. Relief, pride, and even a touch of fear lingered in her mind. What if the men retaliated? What if nothing changed despite filing the report? But Elena seemed to sense her unease and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You did the right thing," Elena said firmly. "Filing that report sends a message, not just to those guys but to everyone else who thinks they can get away with treating people badly. You're setting an example." Maya nodded, drawing strength from Elena's words. "I hope so," she replied softly. "But sometimes it feels like no matter what we do, the system doesn't always work the way it should." "That's true," Elena admitted. "But giving up isn't an option. Every step matters, even if it feels small. And hey, if anything happens, you've got my number, remember?" Maya smiled faintly, grateful for Elena's unwavering support. "I remember." Later that evening, news of the incident spread quickly through the tight-knit community. Someone at the police station must have mentioned the story to a local reporter, because by the next morning headlines appeared online and in newspapers. "Disabled woman stands up to bullies with help from heroic soldier." The article highlighted both the injustice faced by individuals with disabilities and the courage of those who defended them. Social media buzzed with reactions. Some people praised Elena for stepping in, calling her a real-life hero. Others expressed outrage at the behavior of Jake, Ryan, and Kyle, demanding accountability. A few comments criticized Maya for making a big deal out of the situation, but these were quickly drowned out by messages of support and solidarity. Maya scrolled through her phone, reading some of the responses. While she appreciated the positivity, part of her wished the attention wasn't necessary in the first place. Why did it take a viral story to make people care about issues like bullying and discrimination? Still, she couldn't deny the impact it was having. Friends and acquaintances reached out to check on her, offering kind words and encouragement. Even strangers sent messages thanking her for speaking out. Meanwhile, Jake, Ryan, and Kyle found themselves facing consequences they hadn't anticipated. Their faces appeared in news reports, identified as suspects in the ongoing investigation. Friends distanced themselves and family members urged them to apologize publicly. Despite their initial bravado, the reality of their actions began sinking in. One afternoon, Maya received a call from the police department. The officers informed her that all 3 men had been questioned and charged with harassment and assault. While the legal process would take time, the charges marked a crucial step toward holding them accountable. When Maya shared the update with Elena during one of their conversations, the soldier smiled proudly. "See, I told you, you're making a difference already." "I couldn't have done it without you," Maya replied honestly. "You gave me the courage to keep going." Elena shook her head modestly. "No, Maya. All I did was remind you of what you already knew deep down. This is your fight and you're winning it." Over the following weeks, Maya continued sharing her story, using the platform the media attention had given her to advocate for greater awareness and protection for disabled individuals. She spoke at community meetings, wrote op-eds for local publications, and collaborated with organizations dedicated to fighting discrimination. Each step felt empowering, reinforcing her belief that change was possible, even if progress came slowly. Through it all, Elena remained a constant source of support. Though she eventually returned to her duties as a soldier, she stayed in touch with Maya, checking in regularly via phone calls and texts. Their friendship blossomed, built on mutual respect and shared values. Maya often reflected on how unlikely their meeting had been, a chance encounter in a park that transformed her life in ways she never imagined. As autumn settled over the town, painting the trees with vibrant shades of orange and red, Maya visited the park again. This time she walked confidently along the paved paths, her crutches clicking rhythmically against the ground. The memory of Jake, Ryan, and Kyle still lingered, but it no longer held power over her. With each step, she reminded herself of the truth Elena had helped her rediscover. She was strong, resilient, and worthy of respect. In the distance, children laughed as they played on swings, and couples strolled hand in hand beneath the golden sunlight. Life moved forward, as it always did. But for Maya, something fundamental had shifted. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was thriving, determined to create a world where no one else would have to endure what she had faced alone. And somewhere, miles away, Elena smiled knowingly, proud of the woman Maya had become. Weeks passed since the incident in the park, and life began to settle into a new rhythm for Maya. The charges against Jake, Ryan, and Kyle moved forward in court, though the legal process was slow and frustrating at times. Still, Maya refused to let bitterness consume her. Instead, she channeled her energy into something bigger, an idea that had been growing in her mind ever since the media coverage brought attention to her story. Maya wanted to turn this moment into more than just a personal victory. She envisioned a community event aimed at raising awareness about bullying, discrimination, and the challenges faced by disabled individuals. It would be a day of education, support, and solidarity, a chance to bring people together and spark meaningful conversations about empathy and inclusion. When Maya shared her plan with Elena during one of their regular calls, the soldier immediately offered her help. "You're not doing this alone," Elena said firmly. "Whatever you need, I've got your back." With Elena's encouragement, Maya threw herself into organizing the event. She reached out to local advocacy groups, schools, and businesses, asking for their support. To her surprise, the response was overwhelmingly positive. People were eager to contribute, whether by volunteering their time, donating resources, or simply spreading the word. The chosen venue was the same park where everything had begun. Maya liked the symbolism of returning to the place where she had felt so vulnerable but ultimately found strength. On the morning of the event, the park buzzed with activity. Volunteers set up rows of folding chairs facing a small stage, adorned with a colorful banner that read, "Stand Together Justice," and equality for all. Food trucks lined one side of the area, offering snacks and refreshments, while information booths provided pamphlets and resources for attendees. As the clock ticked closer to the start time, Maya stood backstage, clutching her crutches tightly. Her heart raced, not from fear, but from excitement mixed with nerves. She had never spoken in front of such a large crowd before. What if she stumbled over her words? What if no one listened? Elena appeared beside her, sensing her anxiety. "You've got this," she said reassuringly, placing a hand on Maya's shoulder. "Just speak from the heart. That's what matters most." Maya took a deep breath, nodding slowly. "Okay," she whispered, steeling herself for what lay ahead. "Let's do it." When it was finally time, Elena stepped onto the stage first to introduce Maya. The crowd fell silent as Elena approached the microphone, her confident presence commanding immediate attention. "Good afternoon, everyone," she began, her voice strong and clear. "Thank you all for being here today. We're gathered to celebrate resilience, courage, and the power of standing together. But none of this would have happened without one incredible person, someone who refused to stay silent when faced with injustice." She paused, turning to gesture toward Maya as she made her way onto the stage. The audience erupted into applause, cheering loudly as Maya took her place behind the podium. For a moment she stood there, overwhelmed by the warmth and support radiating from the crowd. Then, taking another steadying breath, she began to speak. "Hi everyone," Maya started, her voice soft but steady. "My name is Maya Johnson, and I'm here today because I believe in the power of change. A few weeks ago I experienced something that many people face every single day: bullying and discrimination. I won't lie, it hurt. It made me feel small and invisible. But instead of letting those feelings defeat me, I decided to fight back, not with anger, but with action." Her words resonated deeply with the audience, who listened intently, hanging on every sentence. Maya went on to share her story. The humiliation she endured, the fear she felt, and the unexpected intervention by Elena that changed everything. She spoke candidly about the challenges of living with a disability and the importance of creating a world where everyone could live without fear of judgment or mistreatment. "I'm not special," Maya continued, her voice growing stronger with each passing minute. "I'm just someone who believes we can all make a difference if we stand up for what's right. Today isn't about me, it's about all of us. It's about coming together to say no to bullying, yes to kindness, and always to equality." The time she finished speaking, tears glistened in the eyes of many attendees. The applause that followed was thunderous, echoing across the park like waves crashing against the shore. Maya smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment wash over her. This wasn't just her moment. It belonged to everyone who had shown up to support the cause. After Maya's speech, the event transitioned into workshops and panel discussions led by experts in disability rights, mental health, and anti-bullying initiatives. Attendees participated enthusiastically, asking questions and sharing their own stories. At one booth, children decorated posters with messages of kindness, while teenagers filmed short videos pledging to stand up against bullying in their schools. Throughout the day, Elena stayed close to Maya, offering quiet encouragement whenever needed. Watching the event unfold, Elena couldn't help but feel proud, not only of Maya but also of the entire community for rallying around such an important cause. "You did it," she said during a brief break between activities. "Look, at all these people. They're here because of you." Maya shook her head modestly. "No, they're here because of us, all of us. None of this would have been possible without your help, Elena." Elena grinned, brushing off the compliment. "I just showed up. You're the one who inspired everyone to take action." As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the park, the event drew to a close. Volunteers helped pack up chairs and banners, while attendees lingered to thank Maya and exchange contact information. Many promised to continue advocating for change in their own communities, ensuring that the momentum sparked by the event wouldn't fade. That evening, Maya and Elena sat together on a bench near the stage, watching as the last stragglers left the park. The air was cool and crisp, carrying the faint scent of autumn leaves. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They simply enjoyed the peaceful aftermath of a day well spent. Finally, Maya broke the silence. "Do you think we made a difference?" she asked, her tone thoughtful. Elena didn't hesitate. "Absolutely," she replied. "Change doesn't happen overnight, but days like today plant seeds. Seeds of hope, understanding, and action. And someday, those seeds will grow into something amazing." Maya smiled, leaning back slightly to gaze up at the stars beginning to twinkle in the night sky. She knew there was still work to be done, laws to change, minds to open, hearts to heal. But for now, she allowed herself to feel a sense of pride and fulfillment. Together, she and Elena, and everyone who had joined them, had taken a step toward a brighter future. And as they sat there side by side, Maya realized something profound. Sometimes, the smallest acts of bravery could ignite the biggest movements. As the final rays of sunlight faded into twilight, Maya and Elena remained seated on the bench, soaking in the quiet beauty of the evening. The park, once bustling with activity, now felt serene and still. Volunteers had finished packing up the last of the chairs and banners, leaving behind only faint traces of the day's events. Discarded flyers fluttering in the breeze, stray balloons caught in tree branches, and the lingering scent of freshly cut grass. Maya leaned back slightly, letting her crutches rest against the bench as she gazed at the horizon. Her body was tired, but her spirit felt lighter than it had in years. Today had been more than just an event. It was proof that people could come together to create something meaningful. She glanced at Elena, who sat beside her, arms crossed loosely and legs stretched out in front of her. The soldier looked calm, almost meditative, as if she too were processing everything that had transpired. "You know," Maya began softly, breaking the comfortable silence between them. I never thought I'd see something like this happen because of me. Elena turned her head, raising an eyebrow playfully. Because of us, she corrected gently. Don't forget, you didn't do this alone. Maya chuckled, shaking her head. You keep saying that, but you're way too modest. If it weren't for you stepping in back then, none of this would have happened. You gave me the courage to keep going. Elena smiled, her expression thoughtful. Maybe I helped give you a push, but the strength has always been yours, Maya. All I did was remind you of what you already knew deep down, that your voice matters, and so does your story. The simplicity of Elena's words struck a chord within Maya. For so long she had doubted herself, questioning whether anyone would listen or care about her experiences. But today proved otherwise. Hundreds of people had shown up, not out of pity, but out of genuine concern and a desire to make a difference. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about creating a world where everyone could feel safe and valued. I guess I'm starting to believe it, Maya admitted after a pause. That my voice matters, I mean. It's weird, scary even, but also kind of freeing. That's how change starts, Elena said, nodding approvingly. One person decides to speak up and suddenly, others realize they can too. You've inspired a lot of people today, Maya. Don't underestimate the ripple effect of what you've done. Maya nodded slowly, absorbing Elena's words. She thought about the faces she'd seen in the crowd. Young children holding handmade signs, teenagers filming videos pledging to stand against bullying, parents nodding along during the panel, discussions. Each person represented a thread in the larger tapestry of change, woven together by shared values of kindness and empathy. What happens next? Maya asked, her tone curious yet tinged with uncertainty. I mean, the event is over, but the work isn't done. How do we keep this momentum going? Elena tilted her head slightly, considering the question. It's not easy, she admitted. Change takes time, effort, and persistence. But you've already laid the groundwork. Now it's about continuing to advocate, educate, and support others. Keep telling your story, keep showing up, and don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it. Maya smiled faintly, feeling reassured by Elena's advice. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be smooth. There would be setbacks, challenges, and moments of doubt. But she also knew she wasn't walking it alone. Between the connections she'd made at the event and the unwavering support of friends, like Elena, she felt equipped to face whatever came her way. Speaking of asking for help, Maya said, turning to look at Elena directly. What's next for you? When do you go back to duty? Elena sighed lightly, glancing at the horizon. Soon, she replied. My leave ends in a couple of weeks. But before I go, I want to make sure you're good. Like really good. Not just pretending to be fine, because you don't want to worry anyone. Maya laughed softly, touched by Elena's concern. I'll be okay, she promised. You've taught me how to stand taller, even when things get tough. And besides, we'll stay in touch, right? Absolutely, Elena said without hesitation. Distance doesn't matter. You're stuck with me now. The two women shared a laugh, the sound mingling with the rustle of leaves in the gentle evening breeze. As they sat there watching the stars begin to twinkle in the darkening sky, Maya felt a profound sense of gratitude, not just for Elena, but for the entire journey that had brought her to this moment. From the humiliation in the park to the triumph of organizing a successful event, every step had shaped her into someone stronger, braver, and more resilient than she ever imagined. Eventually, Elena stood up, stretching her arms above her head. Come on, she said, offering Maya a hand. Let's get you home. You've earned a good night's rest. Maya accepted the help, using her crutches to steady herself as she rose from the bench. Together, they walked slowly toward the parking lot, their footsteps synchronized despite the uneven path. Along the way, they passed remnants of the day's festivities, a forgotten poster lying on the ground, a balloon caught in a bush, a discarded flyer blowing lazily in the wind. Each item served as a reminder of the impact they'd made, a testament to the power of standing together. When they reached Elena's car, Maya hesitated for a moment, reluctant to say goodbye. "Thanks again," she said earnestly, meeting Elena's gaze. "For everything. I don't think I'll ever be able to repay you." Elena shook her head, smiling warmly. "You don't owe me anything, Maya. Seeing you find your strength, that's payment enough. Just promise me one thing." "What's that?" Maya asked. "That you'll keep shining?" Elena replied. "The world needs more people like you. People who refuse to give up no matter how hard things get." Tears welled up in Maya's eyes, though she blinked them away quickly. "I promise," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. With one last hug, Maya climbed into her own car, waving as Elena drove off into the night. As she headed home, she replayed the day's events in her mind, the speeches, the workshops, the laughter, the tears. It had been exhausting, exhilarating, and transformative all at once. And while the fight for justice and equality was far from over, Maya knew she had taken a crucial step forward. That night, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Maya reflected on how much had changed since the day Jake, Ryan, and Kyle had tried to tear her down. Back then she had felt powerless, invisible, and defeated, but now she felt unstoppable. She realized that true strength wasn't about never falling. It was about getting back up no matter how many times life knocked you down. And as sleep finally claimed her, Maya drifted off with a smile on her face, dreaming of brighter days ahead, for herself, for her community, and for everyone who dared to stand together in pursuit of a better world.